Yeah. So what happened? So I grew up in Knoxville. I was born and raised here, and I want I want to say this really carefully too. I grew up pretty privileged. I didn't grow up with a whole bunch of trauma, and I didn't grow up on the wrong side of the tracks or in poverty. And so I want to be really careful with that part. I think it's important for me to say, my father's an attorney. My mother was a designer, and I'm convinced they did the best they could with what they knew. And for the most part, I think they did a pretty good job. Uh, and the reason I say that is I work with a lot of people in addiction who have horrific stories. Who, some of the stories I've heard, I mean, would just make your stomach turn. The amount of evil that is in the world, it is just it's scary. And so I want to be respectful to those people who had horrific traumas growing up and then developed an addiction. That wasn't my story. My trauma was when my parents divorced at the age of 9, and that was a really confusing experience for me, and an isolating experience as well. I remember feeling like nobody understood what I was going through, and so the end result of that was me turning internally to answer questions I was never meant to answer, and looking externally for validation. And I got really good at that. And whether that was through athletics or just being a funny guy, like that was kind of that was how I maintained control over the pain that I was repressing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely it does.
So no big traumas, although some psychologists would say divorce is trauma, and I think that it can be, certainly when it's not handled well. I love my parents, but I don't think they handled this one very well, and they know that. But yeah, so the parents divorced when I was 9 was a really confusing experience. Um, Mom and dad remarried, and mom got into an abusive relationship with another guy, and that ended horribly after I had already left home. So I grew up with a pretty broken, fragmented home. Wasn't the healthiest in the world. So it does make sense how I grew up and discovered substances as a way to cope. Um, yeah.
So I worked narcotics for years, and one thing that I try and remind everybody is that it is everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not what people used to think, especially the older generation thinks, well, I am west of Lovell Road, so I'm safe.
Yeah.
That
No.
is not how it is. It
No.
is everywhere, all the time. And so I think that as much as we used to say, hey, socioeconomic factors are the biggest uh, part that it plays, I disagree with that.
Oh, wholeheartedly.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm with you.
and so
Wholeheartedly. Now more money just means better access to better drugs.
absolutely,
Yeah.
designer drugs,
Yep.
and quite frankly, I think it's a little bit easier to not get caught because in the affluent community, we believe that it's not going to be our kids,
Yep.
right? And it's just I wanted to reassure because I know that you put that disclaimer out there.
Yeah, man, addiction, dude, it doesn't discriminate.
Does
and
not.
and if I've learned anything in the last 15 years, it's that it is on all sides of the track, and it is not heavier on one side or the other.
Yeah.
I think people that have money, they're able to hide it longer, and they're able to pad it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, for example, in my peak using, I would end up homeless in 3 weeks because I couldn't float the bills. But yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that, man. I do. Um, so yeah, back to my story. So yeah, growing up, for the most part, things probably looked pretty good on the outside for me growing up. But what people around me didn't know is that I was carrying a lot of heavy stuff, and substances entered the picture. And in the beginning, those were the solution to my problem. And as you well know, over time, that became the problem itself. So I'll never forget the first time I drank. I was at it was actually at an adult's Christmas party. That I won't get into the details of all that, but I remember drinking that night, and I was 13, and I remember going home that night and thinking to myself, man, this feels really good.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that was my first time, and then I threw up shortly after that, and it didn't feel so good. But yeah, but I do remember that thought, thinking, "Man, this feels really good." And then it wasn't long after that I started drinking just about every UT home game where we would go tailgate down in G10. Except I noticed that when when the other people around me were able to stop drinking, I didn't. I kept going and I kept going. Um, and I remember many, Sunday mornings waking up wondering how in the world I ended up at so and so's house or whatever else. And then I started smoking weed right before I turned 16. And then at 16, I got a car, and that was all she wrote, man. And it really was downhill that quick.
Did your parents have any idea about when you started weed?
Yeah. So yes and no. It's this is funny. All right. So the very first time I smoked weed, obviously I didn't know what I was doing, and I was with a buddy of mine in the basement at my mother's house, and we called someone. They're like, "Yeah, you just roll it up and smoke it." And I kid you not, we rolled it up in notebook paper, lit it on fire. Well, what do you think that did? It all went up in flames. And so my mother comes running downstairs, and she can smell it, and we're lying. And yeah, so they had an idea that substances were becoming a part of my life, but I hid that pretty well for the most part. So all that to say, around 16, as soon as I had my driver's license, that was all she wrote. And within a few months, I got kicked out of high school. Um, Parents sent me to this like boot camp program up in the mountains, and it was actually a pretty neat experience. I hated them at the time for it, but I spent this was my 17th birthday and Christmas there, and I think that was the first taste of consequence that I had ever had for substances. But clearly, it didn't hurt bad enough.
Was it secular?
Yeah. It great program. It's called Seuss of the Carolinas in Old Fort, North Carolina. Um, and I actually know some people that have sent their children there in recent years. And it looks like it worked for them. It didn't work for me. So anyway, I got out of there and bounced around. Got kicked out of a couple more high schools. Ended up running away from home for a little while. Spent a little bit of time in juvie, and yeah, I was really biting down hard on that rebel label, and I think so much of it is I was desperate to belong and desperate to fit in somewhere, and I had found a crowd, and they loved the rebellion. They encouraged the rebellion, and we encouraged each other. And at that point in my life, it made sense. I just didn't know what it was doing to my life long term, right? And so, in all of that, finally, I actually didn't graduate high school. I got my GED, and around the time I got my GED, I was 18. I went off to college at Austin P State University for about 10 minutes, and I didn't show up for any classes, and that's when I really started using drugs.
Did you have any difficulty getting into college with a GED?
No, not at all,
Or
actually.
what time frame is this? What years?
Yes, this would have been in 2006, 7,
Okay.
06, 07. No, not any trouble at all. I actually got a scholarship to go out to Austin P. And
Academic or
yeah,
okay.
yeah, believe it or not. But I do remember being really embarrassed at the time that I had to get my GED, but I couldn't stay in school. Like it just wasn't going to happen for me. So I ended up going off to Austin P, and it, yeah, it was bad. So I pulled a triple knot. I tried to show up for my finals, and two of the professors knew that I had not been there all semester, and they tossed me. So I went home, tail tucked between my legs, and parents pretty upset with me at this point, understandably so. And so I come back to Knoxville. I go to Pellissippi, and not long after that, I got hurt, and I went through I'll show you. I went through a storm glass door, pretty sweet scar, battle scar there. Drunk playing backyard football, and severed my radial artery, nerves, tendons, had a few surgeries. And after that, so that was in '07. That's back when they were writing Percocets like it was ibuprofen. And I started, taking those like Skittles, and that was all she wrote. And that set off a chain reaction for the next 5, 6 years of just a horrific addiction to opiates.
Did you were you going to the pain clinics then?
So it got to the point I wasn't going to the pain clinics, but I was going down to Miami, and I was doing all of
Mm-hmm.
that. I'm sure you heard sponsoring people and that stuff. Yeah, so I was in the middle of all that. I think they came out with a documentary a little while back, the OxyContin Express.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
I do.
It's accurate. It's real accurate. But yeah, so I got involved with pain clinics, and then I started selling drugs. That was the only way I could afford my habit. It was probably about $1,000 a day habit back then. I was 2021.
Were you using heroin or were you just using pills or
Yeah,
how?
pills,
Pills.
Roxy's, Oxys.
So you were using Roxys and Oxys, but was this IV drug use or?
No, hadn't got to that point yet. That's kind of the inevitable climb, right?
Yeah.
Addiction, chronic, progressive, and relapsing. So it maintained Roxy's, Oxy's, Opanas for years. But meanwhile, destroying every relationship I ever touched. I couldn't hold a job for longer than 10 minutes. The experience of success was foreign to me, and you see that with people who've been an addict or an alcoholic for a long time. They kind of get to the point where this is just the truth of who I am, right? And and the enemy wants us to believe that the truth of who I am is I'm just a drug addict, I'm a liar, I'm an addict, I'm a thief. And I believed that about myself for some years. Now I understand the truth of who I am. I'm a bloodstained child of the one true King. There's a big difference
Amen.
between those two things, and it's amazing how your life changes when you start to see yourself that way. But anyways, all that to say,
No, I love it. Not being lukewarm right there. That's amazing, right? I love that.
yeah,
I love the testimony. Sorry.
you're cool, man. And so I bounced in and out of treatment centers for years. Went to nine actual treatment centers. At one point down in Florida, and I'll kind of skip through some of this, but I ended up on felony probation in the
And that
state.
was in
That
Florida?
was in Florida for dealing in stolen property, and I had stolen and pawned some stuff that was not mine to pawn. And I learned the hard way that Florida has some of the toughest pawn shop laws in the country. And so I was thinking that I'd get out with a misdemeanor probation, but no, they hit me with a felony. And that was the first time in my life where it was really like, okay, well, now I have a felony on my record, and I can now rule out like 80% of jobs because of this thing. And so I also have a heart for that. That's a whole nother conversation. I think there's got to be a better way in our criminal justice system of stamping people for the rest of their lives with certain things.
Yeah. So, in fact, when you get done with your testimony, if you've got 10 minutes, we can talk about employment because I think that, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So it's a problem. But anyway, so yeah, I ended up on felony probation for a couple years and kind of turned my life around for 2.5, 3 years, long enough to go back to school, and I was able to finish college and went back to graduate school. Um,
Was
and
that in Florida or here?
that was up here in Tennessee
So, did you transfer probation from Florida to Tennessee?
to South Carolina. So I
Okay.
graduated from the University of South Carolina, transferred probation from down there, went to school in South Carolina, and I've got some family over there, and they took me in and loved on me for a couple years and helped me stay sober long enough to finish college. Came back to Knoxville, went to graduate school for mental health and marriage and family therapy, and I was able to stay sober through most of that. Had a relapse towards the end, but for the most part, my life was starting to take a different shape, if you will. And I finished graduate school and got married, moved up to Crossville, Tennessee. And again, I still don't know the Lord at this time. I grew up around the Episcopal Church, but we were really Cheasters. Like, Christmas and Easter, that's when we went. I didn't know, I knew Jesus was a man. And I thought that he was probably a pretty cool dude, and I would have liked to have known him when he was here, but that was about it. That's what I knew of Jesus then. And so I get out, I take a job up in Crossville, and I'm working with a primary care physician up there. And a year and a half later, a few things happened really fast. All of a sudden, my wife and I at the time, she was pregnant. She's about 7 months pregnant with our daughter, and we went in for a routine ultrasound and discovered that her skull had not closed, and so we ended up losing our daughter at 7 months. And then a couple of weeks after that, my grandfather passes away, and I was very close with him. And a couple of weeks after that, the primary care physician that I was working with, her practice got raided by the FBI and under allegations of Medicare and Medicaid fraud. I wasn't implicated in any of it, but my practice went up in flames. And so all of that happened in just a few months. And I did not have a support system up there. And that's a theme throughout my story. Every time I tried to get sober, I tried to do it on my own, and it never worked. I thought that independence meant responsibility, and I wasn't responsible unless I was independent. And I can't be independent if I'm asking for help.
So, I've heard that theme a lot. A lot of people call it white knuckling.
Yeah.
And how it's almost never successful.
No, it is not. I mean, I know some people right now that are white knuckling it, and they're sober. They're miserable. Yeah. That's not recovery. At least that's not a recovery I want. So yeah, I didn't have a support system, flying solo, and I did what any self-respecting addict would do at that point, and went right back to what I know is gonna help me push all this pain away. Except this time it was different. I had experienced a little bit of success, and I had some money, and so now I've got some pride and some ego mixed in with this relapse. And not only did I pick up where I left off, I picked up harder, faster than I ever had, and went straight to the needle, which is when you asked me that earlier if I was shooting up, I was like, no. And so you would think that after 3 or 4 years of sobriety and going to school and getting a degree, a couple degrees, I went back to the needle within a few days.
Wow.
Yeah. And the needle was, or not back to it. I went to the needle within a few days, and the needle was not really a part of my story before this. And so with that, Brandon, within 7, 8 months, I had completely destroyed my life, my marriage, my career, my finances, all of it. My wife wouldn't even pick up the phone to talk to me there towards the end. And so, long story short, I ended up getting arrested for manufacturing and distribution. And here I am, a therapist in Crossville, right? And just a few months prior to this, I was sitting on the drug court board in Cumberland County. Yeah, talk about embarrassing.
Was it manufactured meth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So I had never touched methamphetamine. And my story about meth is I had been using opiates again for a few months, and I couldn't find any one day. And the guy that I had bought my stuff from was like, well, hey, this will keep you out of withdrawals. And it did.
So that it's interesting. You were struggling with downers, and then you moved to an upper. And what happened? Did it just take hold, or?
Yeah, well, except now I'm doing both.
Okay,
now
so you're doing uppers and downers.
Yeah, so I was doing meth and opiates at the same time. But the meth really grabbed a hold of me in a way that I had never experienced. Chronic progressive relapsing, right? And I think this was the first time in my life, and this may sound crazy after all the stuff that I've been through in my teens and 20s, this was actually the first time in my life I'm looking at this thing going, wow, I really am an addict. Like this makes sense to me now. Because I had finally seen the chronic and the progressive and the relapsing piece of it, and I couldn't deny it anymore. So yeah, I end up getting arrested, manufacturing and distribution, and introduction into a penal facility. So when I got pulled over, of course I tried to hide it going into the jail, and they found it. And apparently in Tennessee, that's kind of a big deal. So
it is.
So here I am, hit with more felonies, and my career's gone up in flames. I didn't think I would ever allowed to be a therapist again. I don't have a relationship with the Lord. Nobody in my family will pick up the phone except for my mom, and even that was like probably in small doses for So it was a pretty lonely point in my life. And so I went back to treatment again at Cornerstone here locally, and a place down in Georgia called Blue Ridge, and piecemealed together a few months of sobriety, waiting on the court stuff to settle. And on January 27th, 2018, um, it was the coldest night of the year, and I'll never forget. I'd been sober right about 3 months, and my wife was a nurse at the time at UT Hospital, and she was at work, and we just had our son a year prior, or no, yeah, sorry, we just had our son a year prior, and his birthday was 2 days from then. And I saw that as an opportunity to relapse. So I took my son to my mom's house so he wasn't with me. And I remember standing in the kitchen of our apartment, tears welling up in my eyes. And I remember crying out to God, like, if you're real, take this thing from me. Because I knew what was going to happen. My wife was going to catch me, and she was going to leave me. And I knew that she was done if she caught me again, but I didn't care. Um, Not that I didn't care, I did. But I cared a lot more about not feeling what I was feeling than I ever did anything else in addiction. And so I remember crying out to God that night, like, if you're real, take this thing from me. And I did the drugs, and I remember as soon as I finished thinking that was too much. And that's the only thought I have, is that's the last thought I have. I was looking at the stove in our apartment, and I remember thinking that was too much. And my ex-wife found me about 7 hours later, face down in the kitchen. My heart rate was 7. My respiratory rate was 3 breaths per minute, and my core body temperature was 84 degrees when paramedics arrived.
I mean, I guess of all the things, at least you were face down.
Yeah. Well, so two things they think is what saved my life. I'm going to say three things because it was Jesus, but um, scientifically, they think the two things that saved my life is, one, I was face down, so I didn't aspirate, but two, it was the coldest night of the year that year, and I had left the back door open. I used to smoke cigarettes. I don't smoke anymore, but I had left the back door open and the heat wasn't on, and so our apartment had gotten down to like 38 degrees, and so they think that, I guess, that process slowed my body down just enough to preserve it. They hit me with Narcan 9 times, no response. And so I ended up on life support for 6 days at Park West Hospital. And I remember waking up. Well, they said I woke up before this. I don't remember, but I remember waking up really, really confused, really disoriented. And the very first phone call I got after waking up was my attorney calling to say, "Hey, bud, you're screwed. The deal I had worked out for you, it's done. They want you to go to prison." And that was the very first phone call that I can remember waking up. And like, okay, well, I'm alive, but then there's that. And not long after that, Chuck Hooten, who's praise and worship pastor at Shoreline, love that man. He came in the room and he said, "Man, are you done yet?" And I just shook my head. It's like, "Yeah, I am." He was like, "No, like, do you believe yet? Like, do you finally get it? Do you believe?" And I just broke down in tears, man. And there's doctor came in the room and he grabbed me by the toe and he said, "Kid, you're a miracle." Sorry.
No, take your time.
My son's first birthday was 3 days before that. And every time I think about that, I think about my son having to grow up without a father. Man, I'm just so grateful that's not what happened. So, anyway, man, that's where I met the Lord. Um, and he saved my life that day in the hospital. But he didn't save me from the pain that was about to come, because it was just getting started. And so I ended up, I didn't have to go to prison. but I did have to go to treatment for a year, and this is pretty neat. But I went to a place called Spring to Life in Middle Tennessee, and they don't do 1 year treatment programs, and they've never have before. So why they allowed me to come there for a year, the only thing that makes sense is God just allowed it to happen. Um, because I was looking at having to go places that would have allowed me no contact with my son, no visits with my son, no phone calls with the outside world, letter writing only for the next year or 18 months. Um, Obviously, the Lord didn't see it fit that that's where I needed to be. And so I ended up going to Spring to Life, and I couldn't have asked for a better experience. And it was there under the guidance of Ron Anderson and Adam Comer and Ryan Chittister and those guys out there that they showed me the gospel, and not just in text, but in real life, in relationship. They showed me what it looks like to love someone. And I think that was the first time in my life I discovered a love greater for other people than of myself. And it changed everything. And a big moment while I was there, the first 3 months, I thought about suicide every day for the first 3 months. And yes, I was a believer, but it was unbearable. My wife wouldn't speak to me. I had $7 to my name. I lost my house, lost my driver's. I lost everything, and there was a chimney at S2L. And this is dark, and you can cut it if you need to. But I remember for 3 months, almost every day, walking around the cabin at the treatment center, looking at the chimney and the concrete pad that was about 3.5 stories below it. And I looked at it every day for 3 months, thinking about taking my life that way.
What would stop you, day by day,
My
or
son. Yeah, it was either thoughts of my son or Chittister or Ron or Adam or any of the guys there. Man, it's just it was an awesome place. And about 3-4 months in, there's this road out front, and I would kind of like frantically pace in the mornings. I had so much anxiety; it was unbearable. Um, and the scripture popped into my head, and I didn't know what it was, but 1 Corinthians 15:9 pops in my head while I'm walking. I'm serious. I don't know what it is. I'm like, okay, that's weird. But I go back to the house after I'm done walking, and I open it up, and it's Paul, and he's talking about how he doesn't even deserve to be called a disciple. And I'm reading that, and I'm like, why would Paul say that? This is the greatest crusader for Christ ever. Like 60% of the New Testament, if not more, is because of this man. And he's saying he doesn't even deserve to be called an apostle. And it hit me in that moment. It's like that's what's missing. It's humility. And that again, that was another moment that changed my life. But that's what was missing. It's like up until that point, I had tried to do everything on my own, and here I am. I'm also a master's level therapist back in rehab. It's like, okay, well, I know about all this stuff too. They can't really teach me anything. It's like, man, I wasn't teachable. Nobody could tell me anything back then. And it was in that moment I looked up at God and I was like, all right, you win, man. Like I don't know anything. This day forward, I don't know anything. And the rest is history. So I
what
got
year was that?
yeah. So that was in 2019,
Okay,
and then yeah, here we are 7 years later.
man, praise the Lord.
Yeah, I did not think I would get that emotional this time. I've told the story a million times. It hit me different today, but
Maybe
yeah,
that's why you got rescheduled for
maybe
today.
I hadn't felt that in a while. So it's a good reminder.
Man, what a powerful story.
Yeah.
And is there any advice if you could give the younger you, the 9-year-old or the 13-year-old you, what advice would you give them?
Be yourself. And I know that sounds so cheesy, but you don't have to be anybody but who God made you to be. That's it.
100%.
I
So,
spent my whole life trying to be what other people thought I needed to be, or what I thought they wanted me to be, so that I could either be loved or fit in, or no. No, no. Be you, man. Be you, even if it's weird, even if it's quirky, even if it's, I don't care. Be you.
I
Yeah.
love that. And I love that because, on a personal note, what you probably don't know is my son that was walking with me yesterday when you saw us leaving church.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's autistic,
Okay.
and he struggled his whole life with wanting to feel like he's fit in. And I've told him that so many times, and I keep an extra close eye on him because of it, right?
Yeah.
Because of the world that I've seen and the things that I know
Yeah.
about it.
And we so desperately want our kids. Man, we so desperately want them to hear us. I have 5 kids now. Okay, so I,
You
mind
don't
you,
know when to quit.
I get out of treatment 6 years ago with 1. Now the Lord has blessed me abundantly. I took the proverb, "What blessed is the man who hath a full quiver," to heart. I don't know what a quiver is, but I think it's what I've got. So,
Well, Lord have mercy. Now, you're married again.
yes.
Is it the same woman?
No, it's
Different
not.
woman?
It's a different woman.
Okay.
Her name is Brooke. She's an angel, and I don't deserve her at all. But she's an amazing woman. She's a nurse. And
What's the love story there?
yeah, man. So I had just gotten divorced, and I'd been separated from my wife for a little over a year
Okay.
when Brooke and I met. But I was in rehab with her brother, and I actually came back to Knoxville with him on a visit, and I remember seeing his sister in the living room, and I made a comment to him later about, "Hey, your sister's pretty hot," and he would jokingly said, "Yeah, I think you should marry her. Actually, her and her boyfriend just broke up." And so, long story short, he ends up his name's Nick, but he ends up putting a group text of myself, his sister, and him, and she and I met for coffee at Honeybee Cafe in Farragut, and Nick, 5 minutes before I meet his sister, proceeds to text me and say, "Hey, you do know she hates coffee, right?" I'm like, "Really? You couldn't have told me that before we go to a coffee place for our
That's
first date?"
hilarious. Did you walk next door to Sonic and
No,
get munchies?
no. I had she loves chocolate milk. So she had a chocolate milk, and I had an oatmeal cream pie, and I didn't make her smell coffee. So
That's amazing.
yeah,
And now your mother-in-law works here with you.
yeah, she's so my brother-in-law has also battled addiction and opiate addiction, and he wouldn't mind me saying that here. And my mother-in-law is the family support coordinator here, and so it's a tangled web, but it's beautiful. And my wife had a son before me. His name's Drake. He's 13, so I adopted him, and then she and I have had 3 kids in the last 5 years. So
Lord have mercy.
yeah,
You're busy.
yeah.
And you said tangled web. I'm going to have to politely disagree with you, and I'm going to say community.
Yes.
Okay. Because another one of my pillars that I put in my thesis was your water right here.
Thank you.
Is community.
Yes.
Right. And so you touched on it earlier, but education, employment, community,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Mental health. It's like these things that are so necessary, and maybe it feels like a tangled web, but guess what? Your support system,
Yep. It's unbelievable.
literally arm in arm with you, man. That's amazing,
dude.
You
I've
can't
got an
beat that.
army now. It says because when I got out of Spring to Life and I came back here and started a construction company. I mean, I was in recovery and I had a healthy network of people and I was doing okay. And so when the opportunity for this place presented, like I said earlier, I didn't know if I wanted it or not, and so thankful I did because in that process, so Dr. Cofield and Seth Hammond, and Henry Bieber and Chuck Hoot, Sarah Keel. The Lord has put so many amazing people in my life. Todd Colbush in my life to Corey Mayfield. The list just keeps going. Who just love me, and I can call them at any time. And um, yeah, it's amazing.
Man,
My story doesn't feel like mine. I think sometimes it's surreal. Oh yeah, and I am now officially a licensed marriage and family therapist and a licensed alcohol drug abuse counselor level 2 in the state of Tennessee. And I'm saying that this is significant because I've spent the last 3.5 years under clinical supervision, redoing all of my clinicals from graduate school. Because if you don't complete it in a certain number of years post graduation, You have to start over. And it's also in there that if you have felonies on your record, it may disqualify you from licensure. And so I took a huge leap of faith 3.5 years ago and said, okay, well, I'm going to redo all my hours. And if the state denies me, they deny me. And I submitted my applications 4 months ago, and I got both of them back. Good to go.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, I may or may not be the first convicted felon in Tennessee that's an LMFT.
We might have to look into
I
that.
think we need to find out.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate all your
Yeah,
time.
man, thank you so much.
I don't know if you know.